It's Wednesday evening, August 30th. I want to give you an update on the tropics. We have Idalia. We still have Franklin that is out there spinning off the coastline. That caused some issues with rough surf and some of the overwash along the outer banks earlier today and yesterday. But of course, the big story, Idalia coming ashore here just around 7:45 this morning in the Big Bend area of Florida. It briefly strengthened up to a Category 4 before weakening just a little bit before landfall. Still a major hurricane and the strongest hurricane to hit that part of Florida in well over 100 years. You have to go back into the 1800s before they've had a storm this strong in that part of Florida. The Big Bend area, by the way, is where the Panhandle and the peninsula sort of come together, but they had flooding all the way down towards Tampa, still dealing with some of that heavy rain. Now the storm is lifting northward, moving at a pretty good clip, 21 miles per hour. So that's certainly some good news. It's not going to be like some of the systems that we've seen that sit in the same area for days and days and produce copious amounts of rain and cause issues with flooding. But still, along the forecast track, that potential is there for flash flooding overnight and into the morning tomorrow. Here's that forecast track, carries it quickly right along the South Carolina line and then just south of Cape Hatteras by 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon. Then it sort of meanders over towards Bermuda. No threat of it really curving back towards the United States, at least not through the Labor Day weekend, and it'll likely continue to fizzle out here in the central Atlantic. So let's talk a little bit more about the specifics and our concerns here in coastal Virginia and North Carolina. Heavy rain, which could cause flooding, especially in North Carolina. There'll be some parts of the 13 News Now viewing area, the Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck, parts of the Eastern Shore that don't see hardly any rain from this system because that northern edge of that rain is going to be cut off right around the south side. Minor to moderate tidal flooding. We're going to see sustained winds out of the northeast for a couple of days. And that means even as the storm exits off towards the east, we'll still see that threat of tidal flooding. Generally winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour. It's going to be a windy day tomorrow, and we could see gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour, especially through coastal areas. So you can see right along that forecast track is where we've really painted in that likelihood of flash flooding running through tomorrow morning, and that'll even continue into early tomorrow afternoon. Low threat as you move into the south side and areas north of the Albemarle Sound and between the Albemarle and Pamlico, the possibility of flash flooding. And I think especially here closer to the Pamlico Sound, we could be talking about maybe 8 or possibly even 10 inches of rain. So that could cause some issues with flooding, especially if you have tidal issues coming in with the water coming up and poor drainage along the outer banks or in some of those rivers and inlets. I wouldn't be surprised if around Morehead City or even through parts of Hatteras Island, Ocracoke Island, we see some issues with flooding. And again, it is painted in that likely category here, mainly areas south of the Albemarle Sound. So how much rainfall are we talking about? This is the latest run of Futurecast, running 6 to 9 inches of rain around Kill Devil Hills and even along the Albemarle Sound through Edenton and Elizabeth City, 2 to 4 inches of rain. Inch or two through the south side, and then notice as we move up the peninsula, Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck and the Eastern Shore, not much rain at all. So the biggest threats will be that heavy rain along and south of the Albemarle Sound as far as flooding from rainwater. But then we also are looking at those winds that'll be kicking up. Here's the forecast overnight. Winds increasing. It'll be breezy by 11 o'clock and turning windy into tomorrow morning. This is 9 a.m. Thursday. Notice wind gusts over 30 miles per hour through much of Southside, even into the 20s to near 30. It's going to be a windy afternoon tomorrow. Stronger winds, of course, closer to the center track and where we're seeing those winds close to Kill Devil Hills, 55 miles per hour, maybe even some 60 mile per hour gusts towards Cape Hatteras as we go through your Thursday morning. Take you into the afternoon as the storm is pulling off the coastline, still gusty winds closer to the water, but those winds starting to diminish a little bit into Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. Winds are finally coming down and we'll see the clouds break and give way to a pretty nice Labor Day weekend coming up. But with those northeast winds, we are looking at tide levels that'll be running a little bit higher than normal. So Sewell's Point is sort of the reference point for tidal flooding in Hampton Roads. As we go through the high tide cycle tonight, 9:30, 4.1 feet. That's considered nuisance flooding. Minor tidal flooding into tomorrow morning at 5 feet. 5.4 minor tidal flooding tomorrow evening. 5.5 starts the moderate category. So we'll be close to that tomorrow, and then by Friday, tide levels starting to go down. That's at Sewell's Point. A little bit of a different story through the Outer Banks and Duck. Of course, the tide levels and where minor, moderate, and major flooding begin, they vary from location to location, but you can see nuisance flooding tonight, nuisance flooding tomorrow morning for Duck. It's really into tomorrow evening that we're looking at moderate tidal flooding, 6.4 feet. Major tidal flooding starts at 6.5. So we'll be close to that through tomorrow evening's high tide, and then those water levels going down along the Outer Banks as well into the day on Friday. And as far as the peninsula goes, up in Yorktown, nuisance flooding tonight, minor tidal flooding tomorrow morning, moderate just at the beginning of the moderate stage. That begins at 5 feet, so moderate tidal flooding tomorrow evening. That's around 10:30 tomorrow night up along areas of Yorktown, and then not nearly as big of an issue farther up the Chesapeake Bay or some of the other tributaries. So that's in Yorktown. So let's time it all out here. We'll let you know what to expect as we go through the evening. South side, some showers, same thing in North Carolina. Rain will continue to fill in as we go through the evening with the heaviest of the rain through North Carolina. And notice a pretty sharp cutoff, pretty close to the state line overnight into tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Showers and rain through Virginia, just some spotty showers to the north, and that heavy rain down through the Outer Banks of North Carolina along the Albemarle and Pamlico. That's why we're seeing that upped rainfall number of 6 to 9 inches through tomorrow morning, where we see some of those heavier bands moving through. By lunchtime and into early tomorrow afternoon, everything starts to work its way off towards the east. We start to see some clearing, likely even seeing some sunshine by sunset. And then look at this forecast into Friday. Still a little bit breezy, but not as windy. Temperatures in the 50s as in many spots as we start things off, up to 78, mostly sunny for your Friday. And the heat does build a little bit for the Labor Day weekend, but not a bad looking weekend as we go through Labor Day. Still have Franklin that's out there. We mentioned it earlier that some of those swells causing some of the overwash through the Outer Banks of North Carolina and some very strong rip currents up and down the eastern seaboard. And it is scooting here just north of Bermuda. It has weakened. Winds are now down to 105 miles per hour. Racing to the northeast at 13. It's going to continue to weaken into a Category 1 hurricane, then just a remnant area of low pressure with winds of 45 miles per hour by Labor Day next week. So that's the latest. What's going on with Idalia and Franklin. There was briefly a tropical depression out there in the central Atlantic, but that's falling apart and it poses no threat to land. So we'll of course keep you updated throughout the duration of Idalia, some of the heavy rains that we're looking at, and of course we'll have team coverage beginning on 13 News Now Daybreak at 4:30 tomorrow morning.